Hello everyone, this is Mrs. Mann-Deibert and I am here today to teach you how to draw a pug on a treadmill. Now I know many of you might be wondering, how in the world did you come up with a pug on a treadmill? And the answer to that is that the Art of Education, which is an online resource for art teachers, had a list of silly drawing prompts. And one of the things that they thought might be fun to draw was a pug on a treadmill. So I thought, yep, let's do that. That will be amazing. First, I'm going to go over a couple of techniques that we're going to use. We're going to be pencil drawing organic shapes. We are going to be using some shading and using a pencil and our finger to shade. And we're also going to be using our fingers to blend. Next, let's talk about supplies really quickly. Very easy stuff today. We're just going to use white copy paper or printing paper or any drawing paper and a pencil and an eraser. I used a number 2 pencil, which is kind of the standard regular pencil that we should all have access to. As always, don't forget to ask your parents before taking supplies. So here's a pug on a treadmill, and we're going to go through all of the steps so that you can create your own. I've got my piece of paper out, and I'm going to put my reference, the one that I've already created, right next to me. I like to have my reference right beside me. It helps me with shapes. We're going to start with the top of the head. And you're going to see that it's going to have a rounded shape, but it's going to come in and down just a little bit. Line it up to make sure that we're going in about the same width on either side. And round that out. So remember, draw light until you get it right, so that if you do make a mistake, very easy to erase because your lines aren't that dark. We're going to start making the ears. The ears are going to come out and follow the head around. Pugs have very silly ears. They're very short. They're very waggly, I guess is the word I would use. I'm just going to make those ears. We want to try to make them symmetrical, and you'll notice that in the video, I will check where they end frequently. We're going to draw the bottom of the head, and it's going to be sort of a flat bottom. The collar is going to end up going right underneath the head, so we want to have a really flat bottom. I'm just going back and checking my work and making sure things are where I want them to be. Okay, the nose, very center of the paper. We're going to draw a curve, like a candy cane line. And you'll notice that I am really pushing really hard to make its nostrils very, very dark. Connect with a little round circle, half circle, and then a little straight line down. And that is going to be the divisor, or what divides in half, our muzzle. So you'll notice I'm rounding out, making almost like ovals, very organic shape here, to create the muzzle or the little face of our pug friend. So, are they even? Check your work. Not really, so there's still plenty of room to edit and redraw that line a little bit more shallow. Same thing, I'm going to do it many times, where I'm rechecking my work, looking at my reference, and deciding, okay, what's next? I have the little bottom of his mouth, his little muzzle, and his little lip there, and we're going to go ahead and give him some whiskers on his little tiny muzzly face. Remember, always add in and check your work if you're looking for something to improve. I drew a line across, wasn't very even, so I drew another line across, and this is going to be my eye line. And I don't want his eyes to be a perfect circle. I want them to be kind of an ovally shape. And you'll notice I used that line to help me make sure that they're about the same, on the same plane. I'm going to give him some pupils, really big ones. I want him looking up because I think that it's cute for him to be a little sad puppy dog face. Erasing my guideline there. And checking my work. So I'm going to start drawing in some folds around his eyes. Pugs have lots and lots of folds on their face. They're a wrinkly little dog. So whatever folds you want to make any that you want. You can even make the top of his head a little folded if you want, rather than just having him have some wrinkles. So I'm just drawing in some different folded lines, give him a little bit of character, and make him more pug-like. All right, moving on to the next part of the pug. We're going to make his little collar, and you'll notice that his collar is the whole width of his head. So, coming down, making a short little line on either side, and then I'm going to connect that line. And I'm going to make this pretty dark because I want the collar to pop out just a little bit away from his face. I'm going to draw in a tiny line with a circle, and that is going to serve as his dog tag. I colored this one in all the way. You can put a name on it, it's your choice. And I like to use a little zigzag shading to help us really define that collar on the doggy. So lots and lots of shading, pressing pretty hard. And let's start the body of the dog. I'm making a short little curved line to capture his little folded body. That's going to be the front. And then I'm going to start doing the back. So each one of these little curved or hooked lines back is going to be his little wrinkly back. When you're deciding on how many folds to make, you can make 3, you can make 4. The last folded line is actually going to be his whole back. We're going to draw a line parallel to the bottom of the paper, and that line is going to actually end up being the treadmill itself. I want him to have short, squatty, little silly legs. They're not very realistic. I'm going to make his legs in, have a little belly, chest sticking out from his legs, and I'm drawing pretty dark right there, as you can see. Then his other leg, and they're just really simple shapes, almost like a V with a flat bottom. Make his whole tummy go back and stop before we get to the back so that we can make his back leg. And then you can have that other little leg peeking from the back side. His tail is going to be kind of curly. Traditionally, pugs have what's called a corkscrew tail. So I gave it some little zigzag characteristics, and we've got the basics there of our silly little pug that's going to be not going very fast on a treadmill. Taking a moment to edit and look at your work, even though I know it's not done, but to start to think about what parts do I see already that are going to need some work. Okay, so the treadmill. We're going to make a line across the bottom, and we're going to have another line running parallel to it, and that's going to be the base of the treadmill. You'll notice I put a diagonal line to give it just a little bit of depth, and I'm going to round the bottom to create the space where the wheels of the treadmill would actually go. So traditionally, a treadmill is actually on a series of rollers or some type of conveyor belt, and I thought it would be cooler to have it as some rollers. I'm going to make a little front box, like where all the controls would be, so if the pug needed to step on to get off really quickly, he could have that. And I'm really trying to make a little bit of dimension with the form there. So I am now really starting to shade this in to get the look that I'm after. And you'll notice I'm pushing pretty hard and I'm following the direction of my lines. Then I'm going to switch and run parallel with the bottom of the page. And what that is called is cross-hatching. Cross-hatching is a technique of shading where you're making not scribble-scrabble lines, but you're actually making lines go in a cross pattern, cross-hatching pattern so that you can really see the detail and the depth. I'm going to color this all in, shading. If your hand starts to cramp, you can always take a break. Shading, pushing really hard takes a lot of energy and work for your hand. So I'm going to have my little bottom of the treadmill and create some little legs that the treadmill would be standing on. I just put 2. You could put more. You can put 3. You could put 4. However many you want to make. So as I said, I wanted my treadmill to be a series of rollers that our pug friend would be basically rolling on. So I'm just shading in some circles, very loosely drawing them. They do not need to be perfect, to just get that roller shape going inside of the treadmill itself. Again, not perfect circles, just going around and around and trying to fill that in with a little bit of color. So I'm pushing pretty hard on my pencil right now. And I'm noticing, I have room for 2 more or maybe 1.5 more. So I made one kind of smaller, and then I'll make a teeny tiny little roller right there. I'm going to color in or shade my treadmill, and I want the place where you walk on the treadmill, the actual conveyor belt portion, to be pretty dark. So I'm going to lightly get it in there first, and then I'm going to go back, I'm going to make it darker until it's at the shade that I want it to be. So again, cross-hatching, I'm going to go one direction and then go the perpendicular or maybe at a slight angle to give it a little bit of depth. Now I'm going to draw in the bar. So most treadmills have bars on the side of them, so I figured this pug's treadmill certainly needed a bar on it. And I'm going to make sure that it's much darker than the pug itself, because I want it to really show up and to stand out against the pug. I'm going to have it coming out behind him on the other side. So I've got 2 rails there. Just a little bit of erasing and some perpendicular lines down showing the little handrails all together. Okay, pretty happy with that. And now I'm going to start shading. Typically, pugs' tails are a little darker than the rest of them, so I'm going to make his tail a little darker. And you'll notice that my shading lines actually follow the curve of the dog's tail. Really trying to be mindful of the direction that we shade, or how we fill that in. And you'll see me using my finger to blend it out. Now I'm going to switch how I hold my pencil, put it in my hand, wrap 3 fingers around, use my index finger to keep it on top, and this is going to give me a lot more control to shade. It's going to help me make really light shading. So you can see I'm shading in the little pug's body and all of his legs and his tummy, and getting all of that very lightly by holding my index finger on top with all of my other fingers wrapped below. And then I'll go back and use my finger to clean up or blend together any of those marks. So you can see it really helps blend and smooth out those pencil edges and pencil marks. So I've got some shading, but it doesn't look as rough and as hard as it did before I blended with my finger. Going back down and making that treadmill conveyor belt just a little bit darker so that it really stands out against my pug's body. Get in there, darker. So about now, your hand might be starting to cramp, which is okay. Take breaks. You've got plenty of time. I am really excited to see how everybody's comes out, but if you start rushing, it won't be your best work, so take breaks. I'm going to go in and add some little details by going around the circles that I created for the rollers of the treadmill. Just really trying to bring out a little bit more detail. Really make those wheels look nice. Use my finger to blend. create a stronger line on the bottom conveyor belt, and color in the little stands. Again, pushing really, really hard here, so if your hand starts to get tired, you can always take a break. And now we're going to move to the face of our little dog friend. And first, give him a little highlight. I like squares. A lot of people really like to do double circles. There is no one right way of creating a highlight in an imaginary dog on a treadmill, so you do what works for you. I'm going to color in his pupils of his eyes pretty dark. And then the iris, or the colored part, which in this case, most dogs' eyes would be brown, I'm just going to make it a lighter shaded section. His ears I'm going to make pretty dark, because usually pugs have darker ears than they do the fur on their body. So again, pressing really hard to make sure that my ears are going to be very dark compared to the body and the head. What do you do if your hand starts getting tired? Take a break. It's okay. So you'll notice that I am really trying to draw with the grain of the fur, so to speak. And what I mean by that is I'm going to push really hard on my pencil, but I want it to be the same direction that the ear would be going. I'm starting to blend in all of the different elements on the face. His nose is going to be shaded in, not quite as dark as his ears. And remember, we want his little nostrils to be just a tad darker. So if you need to go over those nostrils again, make sure and do it. His muzzle is going to be shaded in as well, and we're going to want this to be a little bit darker than the rest of his face. So I'm using the side of my pencil, I'm holding it with just my index finger on top and all of my other fingers wrapped around, and really lightly pressing on the pencil, and then of course blending it in to get rid of any sharp pencil edges. I really like the idea of him having a little dent in his forehead, so I'm going to exaggerate that right now. And I'm going to color in the rest of his eyes. So remember, you want to leave a little spot. I know that my hand is blocking and you can't see it right now, but hold your horses. You will in a moment. The same as his other eye, leaving a little spot where I drew a square for the highlight of his eye, and then coloring in a little bit lighter below, and really softening that pencil line so that I don't have a bunch of harsh marks on the outside, and using my finger to blend. So I'm dragging some of the pencil from all over those darker parts to all over his face to give some nice shading with my finger rather than trying to shade it with a pencil. So you have that option of always trying to see how much you can shade with your pencil versus your finger. Working on his last ear, getting that shaded, pushing pretty hard, but I noticed pretty quickly that this one, it wasn't as dark as the other side. Sometimes that happens when you're shading because your hand gets tired and you just don't realize you're not pressing as hard. So making sure that you edit and check your work so that you can actually see, is this how hard I should be pressing? Those are really good things to look at and to notice. Cleaning up any stray lines, adding any extra details, all of that is your editing eye, and being a good editor is a really important part of being the amazing artist that I know all of you are. I'm going to erase that little mark, give him that little dent on the top of his head, and here we are, Pug on a treadmill. Pretty exciting. I can't wait to see all of your work. Please make sure and send me a picture or tag yourself on Instagram with me. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.